Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, What's New in Carlson 2023? If you have questions at any point during today's webinar, you can enter those into the question box in the GoToWebinar control panel window, usually located on your right-hand side of your screen, and we'll do our best to address them by the end of today's presentation. If we don't get to your question in time, we'll be sure to follow up with you after the session. We'd also like to note that about 2 hours after the webinar ends, you'll receive an email with a link to the recording to the entirety of today's session. And that brings me to introducing today's presenter. He's a professional land surveyor licensed in Massachusetts and Colorado. He's a renowned drummer, and he's Carlson's survey product manager. He's Doug Auberg. Take it away, Doug.
Gee, thanks, Ben.
Ba-dum-tsh.
Boom. Yeah, you know what? Like I saw, I don't know if it was the last webinar or not. Gary Rosen was doing power tools, and you were adding all kinds of sound effects. So
Yes. He last minute he decided I was the Foley artist, and I tried.
Well, I expect those today. So, not that one that goes. Wah, wah, wah.
Yeah, I had that one in the store and had to take it out.
All right. Well, so what's new in 2023? I'm obviously not going to go over everything that's new. So, last year I did this, ran out of time. So what I'm going to try to do is just pick a couple things from a variety of modules and then see if I have time to go back and add more things. And you know, I'm picking the ones that I think are the ones that I like the best, or the what I think are the most important. So some things are not necessarily new, but they are I guess a great improvement that we've have. And I'm going to start with a drawing setup. And this was actually in last year. I'm just going to point it out again that we have these project scale factors, not this project scale factor here. That has to do with adding a scale factor when you convert from state plane coordinates to latitude, longitude, or back and forth. Is something I've absolutely never used. But what I was talking about is these input entry distance scale and output scale factors, which would allow you to do something to say like enter in information in US feet and have it draw it in meters, or draw everything in feet and have it label it in, say, meters, or what's set up to do is say grid to ground. That's what a lot of surveyors use that at. So I'm just pointing that out again because that's a fairly new feature. It was in 2022, but I like to point that one out. But the one I wanted to point out was it's a simple search function, but if you're setting projections as often as I do, this is really great that if you add predefined feature or predefined projections, and you have to define a projection, and we now have a search feature because you have all of these projections and then they go through the whole world. So we now have something. So if I wanted to do Colorado, as soon as I start typing it, it pops up the available projections on that, and it's a text search. So it's you know, if I have a CO, there's probably going to be, you know, Connecticut, Colorado, Mexico, anything that has a CO in it. So you just start typing. I find that extremely useful, and we finally have that in the software. So that exists now in drawing setup as well as edit process, raw data, ServNet, anywhere where we're selecting a projection. Now we actually have that search feature. So I find that really, really useful. Go back to where I was. All right, the other one is actually last year what's new for 2022, I demonstrated the publish plot and publish feature, which allows you to publish to a plotter or a PDF files or something like that by selecting multiple drawings. IntelliCAD now, this is an IntelliCAD improvement specifically, not AutoCAD has had a sheet set manager for some time, but now IntelliCAD has a true sheet set manager and is now included in the file pull down. A sheet set manager, the reason why this is such an important thing is a lot of, especially engineers that I've worked with that are used to AutoCAD, it's a deal breaker for them to use IntelliCAD because they live by this this one tool here. And what you do with it is you think in terms of a project that would have multiple sheets. Now it could be in an existing drawing with multiple tabs, but you'd actually don't have to be in the drawing to use this. So I can, let's see, I will hit new and start with selecting something with an existing drawing. So I could open up a new one of these. And what this does is create a little external file that holds all this information. And I'm just going to call it demo set. And I'm going to browse. And I'm actually hooked up to a company server here today. So where I happen to be at. So I'm going to steal one of their files. And I think I found an interesting looking one here. And you can select an entire folder. And if you do that, it actually reads through and finds the subfolders. And when I hit next and finish that, hold on a minute. I needed to, let me do that again. I didn't go deep enough here. This is great when you're doing a webinar. Let me, and I import options. I could do a few different things here, but I didn't go deep enough here and get the drawings. I got the wrong job number. That's my issue. It's 21286. Let's try that again. These aren't my files, so I'm borrowing this. Here we go. So here we go. It's a large multi-type development that they were doing, and I'll just pick this folder here. And it reads through that folder and finds the drawings, and there they are. So there's your sheet numbers based on the drawing and the layout tabs that you would find under there. And if I hit next, I can finish that. And here we go. So that looks better. So here's the list of the sheets, and you can modify these. You can put them in order the way that you want them. You can delete sheets that you don't need. And so even if the CAD operator didn't have the layout tabs organized the way you wanted them, you can reorganize things here. And what's significant about this is what some people do with this. This is actually kind of their management tool for the project, because each one of these sheets is a layout tab in a separate drawing. And if you wanted to open that drawing and let's look at this, so you can rename these something more intuitive than just the sheet number. But all I have to do is double click on that. And it actually opens the drawing to work on. And there's the layout tab. So it's a, this is the layout sheet for a subdivision that they're working on. So this ends up being an important management tool for people that use that. Like I said, AutoCAD has had that for a little bit. IntelliCAD now has this full sheet set manager in here, and like I say, you can manage this and then publish the whole thing to a PDF or a printer. So when you get ready to go, you don't actually have to open the drawing to be able to print them. So let me not make any changes to someone else's work. And let's close this out. All right. So in Survey, there a couple improvements have been done. If you're a surveyor and you're not using Carlson Cloud, I want to talk a little bit about the benefits of that. The Carlson Cloud is really the idea here is to let me log in. So the idea with this is to be able to you can see me practicing with it here, but the idea with this is to be able to communicate and share information with your field crews. So I had named each data collector. I gave it a name. So really what it is each one has a login email address. That's all you really need to use this thing. And I have one here, this cloud link. And I'm just going to, this guy is usually out in the field, and I'm just going to, I can send him a text message, and I can attach a file. So like I can attach my CRD file, a raw file or whatever, and I'll see if he answers today. I don't know if where they are. It's raining here in Massachusetts, so I don't know if anybody's out actually working. But this is really, really a great tool. And this has been around for a while, the Carlson Cloud, but this is some major improvements on it. And one of them is that I can now leave it open. The thing that was cumbersome about this is that this cloud always had to be open to be able to receive any messages. So someone would pretty much have to give you a call, say, hey, I'm sending you something. Still very useful. But now when I close this out, I get a little cloud link down in my lower left corner, and I can leave that on all day, and then I'll get messages from the crews if they want to send me something. So they can go pick up data and send it back, and you can kind of do a back and forth file sharing and chatting, whatever, without making phone calls and whatever. So in the chat window, you can send anything. So they can take pictures, attach an image, whatever. Also in Survey, a couple really nice improvements in Edit Process Raw. And let's see if I can find a file here. This is a raw file that somebody sent me. This is one's based on it's GPS. I don't think there's any actual traverse data in here. It's nothing but GNSS locations and vector data. So, but I can still point this out under the process settings. There's a couple major enhancements in here. One of them, I just have to point this out. This has been around for a while, but people misunderstand what that does. But if you have point records, they're PT records in your coordinate file, and you also had started, let's say, a project with an assumed azimuth, there's always been a conflict on which one is it going to use, the assumed azimuth or the point record. So that's what this is. It's going to use the point record if there is one in the coordinate file. So it will read a coordinate file if the PT record's not in the raw file. So in either case, if you have an assumed setup, this will override the assumed setup and put everything on the correct coordinates and backside angle. You now will create a backsite if their one doesn't already exist. So in past versions of this, if you set up on points, say 5,000, 5,000, and assumed an azimuth and shot to that point, what most surveyors would do was they would go ahead and shoot the backsite as a separate side shot to be able to store that point. So now you have the option to just store the point from the backsite record itself. So it saves that extra shot in the field. Now, I believe ServCE in the field had that selection on there anyways, but if you're collecting the data, the raw data in the field, and then processing it in the office, you now have that option to create that point. Likewise, there is an option now to compare the measurements to stored points. So if you have existing points and you go out and do a resurvey and you set up on point and you backsite to another existing point, first off, it will check that backsite. And then if you shoot to other known points that are PT records, right, or control points or points in your CRD file, this will now give you a residual report on how well you hit those points. So all that information gets added to your report when you process your raw data. So those three upgrades I consider like pretty significant, because in prior releases you'd have to do a little bit more work to get those comparisons. You've always been able to do it with checkpoints, but now it actually finds a PT record and logs that any differences that you got. Another upgrade, in addition, is so here's the idea. So this is a GPS file, and they had a base point, that their originated base point, and I don't know if they located everything from that base point. Now they located point number 1, and then they moved their base point to point number 1 and began locating other points around here. And I believe in this file they might have moved it around a few times. But let's say that your initial base point setup was autonomous, that you had an autonomous location and you had located a bunch of points off of that, and you had never gotten a fixed position. So later on, you go back and get a fixed position on that point, so you have correct coordinates, beginning coordinates for that base point. Or let's say another situation is that you set your base point up on point number 1, you're actually on point number 2. What do you do about that? And this is specific to GPS surveys. So in the past, like, you've always been able to reduce the data, and then using coordinate file utilities, you could translate your points from one location to another. But now in the modify measurements dialog box, we now have this base point option. Now, we've always had latitude, longitude, delta, so that would shift a series of point numbers or the entire file by a specific delta XYZ. What we've added to that, because it was always in latitude and longitude, and I felt like that's not really the simplest way for a surveyor to work. They're usually working in terms of coordinates. So now you can actually enter the coordinates of the point, and it'll display it here. So that's an improvement to this particular routine, but the new one altogether is the base point. So if I set that up, let's say from point number 1, it pulls in the coordinates values, and then I can modify those coordinate values here. This is not in Massachusetts. Let me look at those negative coordinates. That's because my coordinate file is set in Massachusetts. This came from New York or Kentucky south. So I've got the wrong coordinate system to demonstrate this, but you'll get the idea. If I was to do that, put point number 1, and I change the coordinate values here. And I'll just, change these by something here. There, it gives me the delta switch or change, and then it finds the points that were located from that base point that we put in there, and if I hit OK, it's going to alter the latitude and longitude by those values and the elevation. So that is a new feature that, and then when you go to reprocess your GPS, you'll get the correct coordinates. So prior to this, there was like the only way to make those changes was back in CAD. So this actually updates the raw file, so then you can use this raw file in like a network. If you're going to do a least squares network or some other kind of adjustment, you wanted the raw data to reflect the correct measurements. So, and then in field to finish, sometimes you wonder, like, what more can we do with field to finish than what we already have? But we're going to keep tweaking it every year a little bit. So let's see, I need a coordinate file here. Oh, I'm being prompted for something here. All right, so let's go to, there we go. Here's a coordinate file. And we're going to go to field to finish. And I'm going to edit code. So I have a very small, simple code table here. And what I'm going to use to demonstrate this is if we had a calculated property line and we went out and found some monument corners, and that we want to draft a plan based upon those found monuments, you can now, I'm going to go to this one here, the calculated position. Under the line type tab, there's now the option to label lines, arcs, and areas. So this is my calculated position, and then what these are your typical annotate default settings. So it uses a combination of your annotate defaults and your auto annotate defaults that simply, tell you, like, bearing left, distance right, what size of text, layers, and all that kind of things. Same with the area. So there's defaults. You set these up just, however you want them, and you save those as files, and then you select those. And so I have one for the calced position, and I just used an iron pipe, but you would have whatever your code's going to be for a monument. And this is just one example of how to use this. And then I'm doing the same thing with a different setup. And I think I added a building in here too. So when after you get the whole thing all set up, when I process this, zoom, there we are. So what I have here is the calculated positions, and it drew a boundary line around it. And then in here, I found a couple iron pipes. So it labels the bearing and distance between the pipes, and labels, FM for found monument. And same like all the way around. There isn't one on here because didn't find a monument in this particular location. So, and then the bearings and distances it create the lot area. So if you would, especially again, this is just one example. So you can think of different ways to use this. You could annotate your traverse lines and your side shot lines. I added dimensions for a building. So I shot the building corners and added these dimensions to it. It's a little bit amusing to me because I back before CAD I used to do a lot of Kogo calcs with a number crunching, and then to send it to a plotter we had an old pen plotter, and you would tell it to plot from point 1 to point 2 to point 3 or whatever, and then that's how you would annotate everything and get the lines drawn. And it's kind of similar to that idea, so you could add in curve information and whatever. But it's kind of useful. You don't have to use it as a drafting feature, but it can be used that way. But it's this just kind of a cool little new upgrade to that. So then another upgrade that I really like is we have a few points here at this one corner. Whatever we have here. So we've got several locations at this one corner, let's say. And we've had this best fit for quite a while, but the improvement with this is the best fit point. I'm going to select from screen. Now gives you individual residuals for horizontal and vertical. So you can see the difference between the horizontal and the vertical, and you can turn them on or off. So I can hit process on or process off. And if there was one that was way out to lunch here, I could turn that one off and decide not to use it. So, and then I can output an average point and give it a description, lot corner or whatever it's going to be. And I've got a new point now and this little report on it. So that is an improvement over an existing command. Prior to this release, what you got was a residual that was in 3D. So if you were really not paying attention to your elevations, it was really hard to tell how close your connection was between the other points, because if you had a bogus rod height in there on a corner and all you wanted was horizontal, well, you got the vertical information whether you wanted it or not. So I am particularly happy with that little upgrade. Another thing that we added is, and this is survey and civil as well, is we've always been able to draw a centerline file, and but now when you go to select it, you can select as many centerline files as you want. So I can grab all 3 of these, and it draws and labels them all at once. So you don't have to go, one at a time. It's just a little time saver, but it's if you're working on a subdivision that's got a lot of different roadways and you want to bring in your centerline data from one file to the other, it's really quite handy. All right, so something that I want that we've another upgrade that we've done in the civil module. If you've done some design work in civil, this pull-down tab of the 3D data contains a whole bunch of tools that help you design, create design elements. And essentially what we do is, we work a lot with 3D polylines. So we've got a lot of options to edit entities and turn them into 3D. I always use that in conjunction with the program SiteNet, which basically you tell it what layers are your design layers, and then whatever's drawn in 3D gets used as a surface. So as long as you can draw it in 3D where you want it, it's going to be used as a surface. So it's pretty simple concept. It's really not complicated at all. To get the things drawn, this 3D data tab is pretty much what you want to use. Like, so for example, if I wanted to, draw a driveway in here up to here, and maybe one. So if I was going to propose this driveway and I wanted to create grades for that driveway, the tool that has gone through some more upgrades, and this is another one of those tools that every year we do a little bit more with. So some real simple user interface changes have been made to this, and some more advanced editing. But if I pick this polyline, I've got, it doesn't have any elevations on it, but there's a edge of pavement line that was shot in the field. So if I wanted to start this driveway wherever this elevation is right here, I can do that by adding a vertex at a crossing. So I've got this polyline selected, and what it does is it shows these little blue squares, and you can click on one of them and it'll create a control point, and you'll see it displayed with a number 1, whatever elevation that is. And I'm going to add a vertex at a crossing and then pick that 3D polyline, and it creates an elevation there. Now I still have the old one because I had that selected as a control point. I don't need that now because I've kind of got 2 vertices in the same place, so I can just simply delete that one. And this changes to point number 1. So there's my elevation. And then one of the enhancements is now there's a slope in and slope out of each polyline segment. So when you're at a vertex, you've got a slope in, so you can have a different slope per segment there. So if I pick this last one here and say that I want to go up at a 5% grade, it calculates that elevation right there. And while so this is allows you to make much more fine-tune adjustments along a polyline. So on a more complicated site where you're going to have a lot more going on than just a driveway, it helps that a lot. And I can actually select, while I'm in this, select a new polyline here, and I can select this vertex here and pick an elevation from the screen, and I can pick the one up here. And so it matched that elevation up at that end. And then I can add the elevation here doing the same way I did at a vertex at a crossing. And I've got an elevation down there. So I've got, this side was at 5% exactly. This side's a little greater than that because the driveway's shorter. So it's a pretty good tool. We have had it for a while, but I'm very happy with the improvements that we've made for it. Again, year after year, but once again this year we've got a few cool new things for it. I hit OK and it saves that. And These are the only two things elevated here, but then you can use this and project slopes and do whatever your design work is going to be for. Another improvement on an existing command. So here I just have a simple. This is in the works in harmony with RoadNet, which if you're doing design work of roads and you haven't used RoadNet, I really encourage you to give that a try. It's so simple to use. It's just so simple to use. So if I'm going to open up a RoadNet, which I've already created a RoadNet, so I've got a main road here and this other road. This is road A that curves around, goes back here. Main road comes in here, and I put a cul-de-sac at the end. So it's just really easy. You supply a template and then a road profile, and it grades it out, projects it down to your existing slope. But what I wanted to show was this tool that we have called tag curb ramps. And then the new thing is the edit curb ramps, but I'll show you this first because this has also been improved. Let me get rid of that for a second. So the curb ramps can be a couple different things. They could be like a little handicap ramp, and you would put in your, whatever your ramp width is in a taper, and you get that kind of looking thing. So you can drop in handicap ramps, but you can also use, in this situation, I'm going to use this as a driveway. So you can see that this really handy graphic here updates with the values that you put in there. So if I'm going to use this for a driveway, let's say it's going to be 14 feet wide. I'm going to just go back 3 feet to start with. It's got a curb to go through. You can see that it's picking up the pieces there from the curb lines. I've got a curb template installed here, and when I hit OK, I can just, if I was going to have a driveway here, I can just kind of go to this front curb line and hit nearest. I'm just snapping to. So there's going to be a driveway there, and I'll just put in those two to start with. And then when I process RoadNet, I get this ramp in here. If I use the cube command to look at these things. You can see how it cuts that in through the curb. So let's say, so that has been improved, but now what you can actually do after they're in place is I can just double click on this and edit it. So there's this idea of adding additional ramps to that. So let's say this gets me back to the shoulder. So then I want to go another 10 feet slope of 1%, and that's the beginning of my driveway. And then you can actually keep going beyond that. And I can hit OK. And then when I process this again, oops, I forgot the last part of that command. I'll show you what I did wrong there. Let's go. I want to go 10 feet at 1% and OK. I forget this. It says exit. And every time I use it, I forget to do that. But now when I process that, I get the rest of the driveway drawn in there, and it grades around that little piece in there. So that's how you can begin to grade in driveways on, subdivision roads and things like that. And so each one can have its own parameters, or you could copy that around if you wanted, because once that little block has that information in it, you can it will recognize that. And let me exit out of that. In hydrology, now I don't know a ton about hydrology, so I'm not going to show you a lot about this, but meeting with the developers, they've pointed out some of the enhancements they've made here, and in the structure, there has been some. One of the things you'll notice is this idea of these graphic displays are through there. So now we have a different and advanced channel and liner design, and you get this these little graphic views to react to when you're adding some of the changes in values in there. The like, let's see, which would be, where's my weir design? Oh, so there's a new advanced weir design. So this is a good one to look at. That there, we got a broad crested weir in here now. So you've got this graphic update depending on what kind of weir that you are designing. And then you can actually draw that. Oh, I've got to give it some dimensions. And you can get, you know, a little detail of that weir on there. That's not a very good one, but that's like I preface that by saying I don't know a lot about hydrology. I'm mostly a surveyor. But then the same thing in the channel design. There's these graphic display changes that you'll see in here now, and these also have the ability to draw a detail to add to your detail sheet. It gives you the information for the channel designs that you had in there. So there's been the updates in hydrology have been largely around in the structure pull down, and HydroNet and its capability to interact with HydroCAD has been improved as well. Now, if I go to, let me just go to the GIS module and try to make it through as many of these modules as I can. I think I'm going to be all right. So in part, some of what we've done was we add support for a new file formats that are out there. So there's this Esri REST services, and this is new to me. This JSON file and the Open GIS GML. These are all new for file formats that we support. So these are new things that are out on the market. They're out there available. So we needed to add support to those so we could deal with those different files. But what we've also done was tried to simplify our shapefile. A year or so ago, we added the ability, I think maybe it was just last year, we added the ability to import multiple shapefiles at once, which was great, but it complicated things with some of the settings on what to do with those different type of shapefiles because they don't all have the same schema. So one of the things happens is as soon as you hit this now, you're asked, do you want to import just geometry only? So if all you want is, like, say, parcel data, you just wanted the outline of the parcels. Contours is a good example. All you really want to do is to put the contours in there and have them elevated. There's really no additional information you need for a contour line than that. So previously we had the GIS data setup that you had to go and create a database file to be able to use the program. Well, if you're not importing data, you really don't need a database or a GIS feature file. So those two files really are moot if you're just going to use the geometry only. So we now save that step. So if I say I just want, so like if I say no, it's going to say, well, wait a minute, you don't have a GIS feature file and you don't have a database. So if I say I just want to import geometry, I bounce to here, and you can see it's on geometry only. I can't click geometry with GIS data. So if I go to select a file, and I happen to have a shape file that's got contours in it, and I can have multiple files here now. But again, if the files are all of different schema, so these are contours, and then you had parcel data and flood zones and everything. Like there's going to be a whole lot of different metadata in each one of those files that you are going to be. It's going to be simplified on how it's going to be able to handle this. It's not. There's no way to go through on each one of those. Might have 100 different features on each one. So in this case, it recognizes that this shape file has data in it. And if I click on elevate contours, so the shape files, some of them, like if I import USGS contours, they're already elevated. So they don't need any attributes um, to designate that they have that to elevate them from. You don't really need that. If you click on this though and select that, it's not going to double elevate it's smart enough to know that it's already elevated. It doesn't need to elevate them again. But in this case, this is elevated by an attribute. So if I click this on, it shows the attributes that are contained in that particular shape file. And you pick the one, and usually it's fairly obvious. Elevation is the attribute. So if I click on that, and then the other options are just around layers and things, and I just hit OK, and very quickly it imports. Not there. There they are down here. So here's my contours, and if I look at those, they're elevated. I forget where these are from, but it doesn't matter. So we sort of simplified the interface on importing those. All right, on to point clouds. So I would say one of the more major products that we have that went through some improvements is point cloud. So we've done a lot to try to win this race onto someday having you open up a cloud and hit a button that just says draw a plan, and then there it is. But we're not there yet. But we are adding all kinds of features to. Let me erase this. I don't know where that is. So I'm going to show you a couple new features, and so a lot of these ones there that you see in here, if you're already an existing point cloud user, you'll recognize a lot of the same features. It's just what's been done to them if they've kind of gone back and retooled them and made them respond better than they did. But there's a couple newer ones that I'm particularly I really kind of think are pretty cool. So we go into the action tab here. One of the things I like, so extract, you can see this little part of the menu keeps getting bigger. And extracting color lines is one of the ones that I really think is pretty neat, because there is an option called color edge. And there's a few settings in here that you can deal with. and you're always messing with an algorithm that you can customize and play with those values. So there's a little there's nothing wrong with a little trial and error to try to get this to follow your cloud the best you can. Wait a minute, I'm going to go back here real quick and turn this off. That's a sharper image there. Go back to color lines. All right, so color edge. So there's finding in between two different colors. That's one of the options, but there's a couple built ones in, and one of them is pavement and grass. So that we kind of came up with yeah, I say we, it's not me. I'm not smart enough to program this, but the there's a few presets. I expect to see us keep adding some of those, but it finds pavement and grass based upon kind of what the generic color are going to be between pavement and grass. So all I have to do once I select that is we now have this menu. If you can see that on my cursor, I hope you can see that. It says press draw edge to begin drawing an edge. Okay, so it gives you some instructions right there, and I hit draw edge, and I'm just going to say I'm going to start here, and then I'm going to pick a second point, and it followed that. You can see this cyan colored line all the way up here where it followed that edge between the pavement and the grass. Now it went a little too far. So we got up in here and it got into some shadows and colors from around that curve. So I can actually right click and hit trim edge and say, I'm going to pick that edge there. And as I drag my cursor back, I can tell it I'm going to stop it right there. And I can do the same thing on this end. So that draws the edge of pavement and it creates a break line. So everything you're doing in here is in 3D. So it essentially just drew a polyline along that edge. So that is pretty cool. Oh, and I hit end action. I forgot to save it, so it warns me so I don't lose it. And I say, yeah, I want to save that. And so I have this polyline in here now, a 3D polyline that can be exported or drawn in CAD. Those things show up in here. Another enhancement it has, I forget how long this has been in there, but it's really been a major push this year, is the ability to recognize these parking stripes that you see in a parking area. But I'm going to limit what the program's going to look at. So I'm going to identify this area by selecting using a perimeter. Now I'm starting to run out of time, but this is so I select that much right there, and I'm going to create a cloud out of that. And I'm going to call it parking area 1. Hit OK. So it creates just a smaller cloud. Instead of trying to do this whole entire cloud all at once, I'm going to try to help the algorithm a little bit. And it's going to open up a new scene, close this one out, which is kind of handy. That's an option now to see one scene at a time. I used to be famous for getting that I had a scene open and I'd go back to CAD and I'd do all kinds of things and I'd X out of the drawing and I'd forgotten to save everything. So it kind of helps that. So I'm going to go back into color lines, and I'm going to pick parking lines. And I'm going to first create a selection by sampling one line. And so this is a pretty good one. I mean, those are pretty clear. The better the cloud, obviously, the better sampling you're going to get out of this. I missed. Let's stop that. Let me change my scene here. Turn this back down. That's better. Why? That's picking too much. That's better. I kept picking. Now, even though you notice it picked part of this white car, look at the way that guy parked. Isn't that shameful? And here too, the algorithm knows that it's looking for parking stripes. That's why parking lines is different than paint stripes or other color selections. So it's going to try to filter out some of the things that says it's got some intelligence in there. So this can't be a parking stripe. And if I hit draw all, it drew them. So I've got these are all these polylines, and then I can actually count them up, and it puts these little red dots. And so any area where here it's looks because it finds the stripe, and you can then add or remove stripes where it didn't work exactly right. So I can move those. There's a car here, so I can hit add a stall marker here. And I can go back and remove any that shouldn't be there. And if so it found some extra extraneous paint in there. So if you can see that it's a handicap marker, you can actually create a handicap. So then you can report these 159 spaces, and it would segregate the standard and handicap spaces. And then you can save this. And let's see, I'm looking at the time, it's 3 o'clock. But once I've done this, I've got all these polylines in here, and I can draw these. Oh, there's one more thing I wanted to show you. There's actually an extract building that's pretty cool. I took the liberty of thinking I was going to run out of time, so I did that in a separate. Again, I selected a building into a separate cloud, just trying to, because this is a campus, so there's a huge building on it, and so to demonstrate that, is going to take a little longer than people are going to want to watch in a webinar. It wasn't too bad though. It probably took a couple minutes to find the building, but I made a smaller one here and I sampled that and I got a building line out of it, a building polyline out of that using that routine. But when it's all done, I can select this and hit draw, and I'll just say select all and hit OK. And when I go back into CAD, let's see, I've got some that this work is a long ways away from each other. So let me try that again. Just erase this stuff. There we are. So there's parking spaces and there's my color edge and the building. And it's the way you start building a plan from a drone image LAS file. And nobody called me back from the field, but if they did, there's messages in Carlson Cloud. So not too bad. It's 3:05. I'll shut up now and see if anybody has any questions.
Well, Doug, so you just mentioned Carlson Cloud again. So we did have one question on that, just a basic clarification. Greg asks, I assume Carlson Cloud is a link between Carlson Desktop and ServCE or ServPC?
Correct. Yep. Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Very
so
good.
Yeah, and on the ServPC end, there's a lot of enhancements made from the field end of things to make it easier for users out there. So you can get being notified that somebody's sending you a file is part of that.
All right, Doug. Oh, another burning question here. What is the release date for Carlson 2023?
Oh, that's if I told you that, I'd have to kill you. So I don't want to. No, I don't. There is a release candidate coming out this week. I just got the latest build that's what I'm working on right now. So the instructions for us is if there's no major, if there's, we don't see anything that we really don't like, it's just about ready to go. So the short answer, I would say another 2 weeks. There's some technical parts about compiling all of this, and I'm actually updating the help menus as best as I can now. So I think we just need probably another week or two.
All right, one more question here from Nathan. Can you send multiple files at a time now with the improved Carlson Cloud?
Yes. I will say that I haven't tried it. That's a great question. I believe you can. I will test that out myself. That's a really good question. That's a really good point. If we can't, I'll make sure that gets added as an improvement right away. Because I can see where you'd want to send, the RW5 and then also the CRD. So good, very good question.
All right, we're gonna have to pay Nathan for that question.
Yeah.
All right, Douglas, looks like that is it for now.
Okay.
So thank you, Doug, and thank you to everyone for joining us. On behalf of Carlson Software, we want to say thanks again. As a quick reminder, you'll receive an email about 2 hours from now with a link to the recording of today's session. That email will also have a link to all of Carlson's upcoming webinars listed on our website, including our next webinar, which will be a week from today. Is that the second? Yes, a week from today on Office Standards with Jim Reinbold. We hope we see you there. Take care, everyone.